All right, I'm recording to the cloud.
Got it. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so oh, wait a minute, that's record. Okay, share screen. Okay, so let's go here. Should work. Okay, can you all see my screen? Let me go up to slideshow. There we go. Can everybody see my my screen, or do you see my presenter slides?
We see that presentation.
You see the right one? Okay, sometimes I have to switch it. Okay, cool. All right, so let me go through a little bit. There's gonna be a little bit of background. I want to give you a couple of concepts that I hope will be very, very helpful for you. The first one basically is that, let me get this working here. All right, this is not working. Not working. Well, okay. I'm sorry. My my automatic thing is working. So basically, our brains determine our success in everything we do, right? We know this, and more research comes out about that. How our brains function really determines our ability in business, in sports, in relationships. Everything comes back to our brain. But we want to constantly improve our brain, but we can't really do that without effort, right? We have to do hard things. And one of the very cool things about our brains is that if we make it work hard, it will change physically in the areas that we're trying to train it to do. So we do that through repetition. But the main thing is we want to really improve our brain capacity. So from our perspective, or my perspective, we actually have 3 areas of growth where we can really make some positive changes in our life. So there is our attitudes, right? How we view the world. Maybe some of you have done some mindset training and so forth, very good stuff. Habitude, the habits that we rely on, or actually we create, that determine what we do. And finally, our cognitude, and that's what the exercise is going to be about, our underlying effectiveness of our cognition, right? How well we think, process information determines pretty much everything we do. In fact, it's kind of like a computer, right? So if you look at your computer, you have your applications, right? Which are, the things you do, right? You have accounting software, you have your browser, you have word processor. Each one of those gets better when they become upgraded, right? It's kind of like our habitude. Our habits are like that. We have many different habits. Some we've created on purpose and some we'd like to change, right? Our habits are kind of our interface with our real world. Now, the operating system is our attitude, how we view ourselves, how we view the rest of the world, like the operating system of your computer. And then finally, cognitude is the CPU. And that's where we're going to focus on with our exercise, because if your brain is faster and more focused, just like the processor on your computer, everything works better, right? All your applications and your operating system. And that's what we want to focus on today. So it's not working. Okay, but how can we make changes fast? Right? So we all want to make changes in our life, but we want to make fast changes. So basically, I developed what I call applied neuroplasticity in response to a request by the Marine Corps about 14 years ago now. And applied neuroplasticity is an agile approach, and I'll go into detail about each of these, for continuous improvement, right? It's applied to the brain, relying on neuroplasticity, which I'll explain, to make the changes, and hacking the process down then to make it even faster. So the 3 critical components are a defined process. We have to define what we want to accomplish. We have to apply robust stimulation, which I'll explain in a minute, and we need an agile approach to continuously improve what we're doing. So the defined process, as Deming said, some of you might be Deming fans. If you can't define what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And so what I'm going to do is to give a little example of how I learned about defined processes the hard way. It was a long time ago, right? I was trying to support my family. I was working in a restaurant waiting tables. And on a Friday, the owner came to me and said, hey, John, I need you to take over managing the restaurant. I had to fire the manager. And I thought, man, this is awesome. I'm going to do great. I can't wait for this. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I know the customers, I know the restaurant, I know how things work. It's my opportunity to shine. Ever get that opportunity where they think, hey man, I can show everybody how great I am, right? That's kind of what I was expecting that night. It was a Friday, which is our second busiest night of the week. And it turned out though to be a complete disaster. And the reason it was a disaster was our busboy, who we depended on for so long and basically took for granted, right? A lot of times in our companies, there's very critical people. We kind of take them for granted because they just do a good job and they're kind of invisible. Well, he was sick and he sent his cousin who'd never bussed tables before. And so everything was a disaster. The poor guy was pulled in many different directions. A customer would say, I need some water. He'd go get some water. Waiter said, I need you to clear a table. He'd go clear a table. So basically, he was running all over the place, working his hardest, but he wasn't getting the job done because he was just trying to do what people were saying. I even had one of the waiters kind of mentor him a little bit, but then we had a problem with the waiter because not only did he have to help the busboy now, he also had to do his regular job. So he was very stressed. Complete disaster. I sat up in the restaurant at night, hours and hours, 3, 4 in the morning, just trying to rack my brain, praying about it, thinking about it. How can we make a difference? And then I passed by this. If you've ever been to a restaurant, you might see this on the wall in the back. This is actually a seating chart. This is how restaurants will determine which sections will go to different weight people. And I had a eureka moment, right? I realized that the problem was that the busboy was, it's not working here. The poor guy was running all over the place, right? So whatever someone asked him to do, he was trying to get it done, working really hard. And at the end of the night, he felt terrible because he felt he'd let us down. The customers didn't get the service they wanted. The wait staff didn't get what they wanted. So it was really a disaster. But I realized when I looked at that chart that I could draw a line that would pass by every table in one continuous path. So I thought about that, and that was a eureka moment for me. And I realized that if I, gave him the right resources, right? We always want to resource our people with what they need, but I could put the bus tray in one place, the water service in another place, the coffee service in another place, and then the silver tray, right? Always bothers me when they don't replace the silver they take at a restaurant. And so Saturday night, which is the busiest night of the week and could have been a disaster, except for this one very simple thing, I just walked him around that process and had him do a different thing each time, right? So the first time he'd go around and pour water, then he'd go around and clear, then he'd go around and replace, and he'd go around at the end to do coffee. So by just following this process, we ended up having the best night we'd ever had at the restaurant. The service was great because the waiters could spend more time with the customers because they didn't have to worry about, any of the things the busboy was doing. The kitchen was happy. Everyone was happy. The customers were happy. The owner was happy. And most importantly, I was happy because I finally had a chance to make things happen the way I wanted. That actually became the foundation. So we just built on that. It's a restaurant outside of Chicago, up in Highwood. And because of this, because we had the service control, we were able to experiment with new food and new wines and everything else. But it all came down to the basing this on a process as opposed to just on people, right? So basically, it's when I got started to really look into the capability maturity model, which was very, very simple process model. It was actually developed for software organizations back in the 70s. No one really uses it anymore. Unfortunately for me, I was able to use it here. And that was the basis for my consulting career, all the way up to, managing one of the largest Y2K transitions for Motorola, all based on this, right? We have 3 different levels of process. Ad hoc, herding cats, right? That's what normally happens when people try to do the best thing they can without any process. That's what was happening in the restaurant with the busboy, right? Because everybody's trying to do what they're supposed to do. And it was a disaster. The repeatable is where you have someone try to mentor someone else. And this happens in a lot of organizations, right? You may have, in your organization, you may have some mentors. The problem with mentoring is sometimes it can work really well with a good mentor and a good mentee. The problem happens though when you have maybe not a good mix. So not only now does your very good people who you're relying on to be the mentors have to help someone else, they still have to do their real job, right? And they can get burned out. They can get burned out, might always go so well. But once you get to the defined level, you get maximum efficiency, right? So if you define the processes that are critical to your organization, and that can be as simple as a checklist. You have your really talented people create checklists for your new people. They can follow the checklist. They feel really good instead of being a burden. They're contributing. And now your good people are free to do the more creative, proactive things that really add more value to the company, and also they're more fulfilling for them. So we have increased productivity and proficiency, which of course equals more profit. So why did that lead me, right? So from the restaurants, I got into training. I created a couple of training organizations. I became an IT director, did a lot of innovations in very early wide area networking technology, got into process re-engineering, developed a number of project management offices, the first one ever at Abbott Labs, kept working on the process re-engineering, did a lot of Sarbanes-Oxley work, right, probably before your time, all process-based for a lot of really large companies, until my specialist was becoming a project rescue specialist. So I could go up into any project that was going crazy, out of whack. And I had other consulting companies that would hire me in as a kind of a hired gun. I'd go in there because a lot of these projects were really out of control, but I always would rely on this model. And we rescued some amazing projects for banks, for insurance companies, even for consulting companies, got them back on track very quickly. So I really liked what I was doing. I was perfectly happy doing this. And then this happened, right? So back in 2006, my brother came back from Iraq. He said that improvised explosive devices, which are the booby traps that are killing someone, our guys are killing. He said, can you do anything to help? And I thought, man, what would be back an opportunity to not just help companies make more money, but maybe help save some lives. So I really, really researched into all about improvised explosive devices. Very, very insidious, right? You may have a pile of garbage in a corner, trigger man a mile, with a bomb underneath, right? With a trigger man a mile away and binoculars and ready to set off the explosion. So really, really insidious danger to our troops. So that led me to an event at 29 Palms, California. The Marines had every year, and the whole purpose of this event was to bring contractors from all over, big ones, Honeywell, Boeing, small guys like me, and expose us as much as possible to IEDs as they could pour into us over a long weekend, and hope that someone would come up with an innovative solution, right? So there was guys who came up with, better armor and better radio jammers, all kinds of good stuff. But what occurred to me was that this is what they have called the kill chain and the prevent chain. Kind of like in business, right? We have a chain of events that want to get to the end. And it started with the motivation of our enemy, the insurgents. And then each step along the way, they were able to acquire the materials, set up set up their equipment and plan it and prepare for it. So as the Marine said, we want to stop this to the furthest to the left of boom as possible, right? You want to stop that process. It's like in business. If you can solve a problem at the front end as opposed to when it actually happens, it gives you a huge advantage. The other thing that occurred to me was the Marines that led us around these exercises had all survived IED blasts. And the consistent story they said was, I started around this one street or this one alley, somebody told me something was wrong, and I went a different way, but the guy behind me kept going and got blown up. So why do two Marines, similar demographics, similar training, have different levels of what we would call intuition, right? Because the first Marine, not only did he sense the danger, he's also able to act on it. So if we could improve intuition, and at the same time, if we could reduce their stress level, improve their focus level, so they wouldn't, start to PO the local insurgents because that's what would happen. They lose their temper, they would insult someone, that person then would start the chain for an IED at the other end. So how could we improve not only intuition, but their ability to control emotions, control their focus, and everything else, control relationships? So basically, it all came down to what I realized was making their brains faster and more focused. So shaking hands with General Stone, the base commander at the end of this event, I realized that what if I could do the same thing for the brain that I did for organizations by improving processes? We can make the brain more efficient and faster, and we could accomplish these objectives and hopefully save more lives. So that led to a Marine contract, right? This is my first contract with the Marine Corps. And the whole purpose was to do a big experiment to see if we could possibly improve brain processing of Marines. Okay, but how? Well, we come right back to the capability maturity model, right? Ad hoc is how we normally process. We react to things that are happening all the time. Repeatable is this would happen a lot for the Marines. They would be under all this stress and they would try to repeat. Okay, so the manual says I got to do this, I got to do this, and it would add such cognitive overhead that they would get burned out, right? So instead of being quick thinking and intuitive, they would get burdened down by trying to maintain a high level of attention. The fine level, though, is just from the capability maturity model, just like what our business is. If we could define the critical processes for mental efficiency and make them stronger, then we could get to that state, the same state we do operationally, where things are operating unconsciously. So the first thing is we have to define something, right? So the defined thinking process. So break it down, think it through, and execute is a defined process that we use. And what keeps us on track is focus and attention. And so basically it broke down each of those to different underlying cognitive skills. You'll experience this in a little bit. But this framework of underlying cognitive skills is critical. Our ability to recognize shapes, to break things down in components, pull them back together again, synthesize them, right? To be able to abstract sequencing is pulling a little bit of data out of a large cloud of data, and then execute, right? And that critical process is, synthesis, where your brain only pulls up what's important, and that's what it thinks about and executes on. And of course, focus and attention is critical to staying on track, right? So, but how do we relate that to the brain, right? The brain, and what's the brain interface? Obviously, we couldn't hook up something like this to all the Marines, right? So, what do we know about repetition, right? So, for thousands of years, we've known that repetition will change the brain. Right? King Solomon, train up a child. Aristotle, we all repeatedly do. So when we repeat things, we become easier for us, right? We change in the brain. But why does that happen? Why does repeating, why does training, why does that become, why do we become better at that by changing our brain? Well, the reason for that is something called neuroplasticity. This is an excellent book. By the way, I'll send you guys these slides if you'd like. The Brain That Changed Itself by Norman Doidge was critical for me in my research, because it's all about how everything we do, even everything we think and repeat, will physically change our brains in whatever we're repeating it. The other key, though, is, so that's great, but how do we make these changes fast? Because I'm going to embed with these Marines for this experiment. How on earth are we going to make their changes fast? Well, that's where robust stimulation comes in. And this is a very, very important concept, and we'll experience again a little bit later. But the brain will change starting immediately if we apply robust stimulation, not weeks, months, whatever, but immediately our brains will start to change if we apply robust stimulation. Now, robust stimulation, from my perspective, and it's been proven so effective, is it's the simultaneous stimulation of the parts of the brain that are critical to executive function, and at the same time, the connections to the real world. Very important, right? This is why, incidentally, digital brain training programs like Lumosity and CogMed, and you do better at the games, right? And they'll even do better at some of the tests that they're created to make you better at. But research continuously shows there's very minimal real world benefits. right? And the reason there's minimal real world benefits is because they're not connecting to the real world. So we need that real world connection to make these stronger. One of the things that happens when we use this type of stimulation is the brain actually increases the speed and strength of the connections between the neurons. We call that postsynaptic receptors. There's more neurotransmitters jumping across the synaptic cleft, but in layman's terms, it makes those connections faster and stronger. And the cool thing is, again, it not only does it happen fast, but it also happens in the areas of your brain where you might be struggling the most, because that's where it has to work the hardest, and that's what stimulates the changes to be fastest. Now, finally, we need to apply an agile approach, right? So an agile approach means that we keep learning. So one of the problems with research is there's even a famous article called "What is 17 years?" It can also often take 17 years for a medical type research to go from hypothesis to something that actually works or might have some sort of conclusion. Nobody has time for that, right? It's got 17 years, we're always in a hurry. So an agile approach, right? It's one of the differences in this study is every time something worked, we kept building on it. If it didn't work, we discarded it. Just like in your business, right? This is a business approach to train the brain. You want to always focus on the highest priority and then keep building on that. So kind of what happened, right? So a little more background about this pilot study. Basically, we had two platoons of Marines. The one I was going to work with was the worst platoon, 40 guys out of 1,000, post-traumatic stress disorder, concussions, failing most of their objectives, against a randomly chosen control platoon. We did IQ tests before and after, and the training, and I embedded with them for 3 months while I developed the exercises, one of which you're going to experience in a little bit, to see if we can make a difference. The pilot results were extremely beneficial. In fact, it blew away any type of results we thought would happen. I mean, everybody, even General Stone, was blown away, right? So from that very poor performance, 3 months later, no more behavioral issues, best performance ever in that battalion, but also the best performance ever in their final pre-deployment training, according to one of the instructors, in just 3 months. They moved different. Everything they did was better. So then we went to Scout Sniper School, one of the toughest schools in all the military. Typically 40 to 60% dropout rate per class, only one dropout with this program. And again, mental toughness, focus, faster thinking, all those critical skills were what manifested itself in such a good performance. And then it spread throughout the military. So I've been fortunate to work with Navy SEALs, snipers, pilots, anyone you can think of that is in really, really tough and situations that needs peak performance. The same program was able to help them. Then we went to civilian world, same thing. And we worked with civilians in anything you could possibly imagine, everything from executives in business, executives in business to inner city kids. I did a number of pilots and some inner city missions down in ministries in Chicago. Inner city kids getting better grades, less violence, professional athletes, not just in almost every sport you can think of, tennis, football, basketball. If you guys, you're probably scattered all over the place, but the Loyola Ramblers a couple of years ago, when it made to the Final Four, worked with them before that. So it doesn't matter what you do, right? That's what we talked about that. If we can change your brain, you do better at everything that you do. So that's cognitive, right? And that's what you're going to experience. That's how we can improve your cognitive. But what about habitude, right? Habits. We're all kind of prisoners to our habits, right? So can we apply the same principle to changing habits? Well, one of the concepts neuroscientists use is something called zombie thinking. And the zombie system is something that we repeat over and over again. Basically, I have a picture of someone driving a car, obviously Harry Potter, but an example would be the first time you learned to drive a car, took all your mental effort just to keep the car on the road, right? Now you drive a car without thinking about it. The brain has made it a zombie system so you don't have to think about it. Zombie thinking then is this these habits, right? So what is a habit? There's a stimulus. Something goes off, something cues you. You then go into the zombie system, and the results, unless you take control of that habit, you can't control, right? You might have good results or bad results. You probably all have habits that you'd like to do better at, you'd like to improve, and habits that you wish you could change, and ones that you want to keep, right? So the typical habit changing techniques, and you can look this up everywhere. There's all kinds of books about it. Typically, they say you can change habits in 254 days, right? 6 weeks. A lot of times I hear 6 weeks. Well, who's got 6 weeks, right? You want to change habits fast. So we can apply the same approach, apply neuroplasticity to change habits, right? So how do we change them fast? Same 3 critical components. 1, we have to define a process. 2, we need to apply robust stimulation. And 3, we need an agile approach to continuously improve that. So the defined process, again, just like with the brain, we have, random acts would be our habits that we want to change. That's the ad hoc. Repeatable, we try to work really hard to repeat a good habit, can take 6 weeks. But if we can define the best habits that we want and then apply applied neuroplasticity, we can create those best habits. So the first thing, again, get control. Same thing as with our brain, right? Define the habit, define how you want to change it, and repeat it until it becomes a zombie system. So we're going to talk about how to change habits by replacement. Okay, so again, define the habit you want to change, define the replacement, and then repeat it using robust stimulation. So one that when I would speak at conferences, I'd ask people a habit they want to change. I don't know if this is yours, but it's a great example, is getting out of bed, right? How many people have trouble getting out of bed on time in the morning? Monday morning, what happens? The alarm goes off. What do we typically do? We reach over, we hit the snooze button. Go to the snooze button. Every 10 minutes, we're hitting the snooze button until finally we pop out of bed in a panic, right? And try to scramble to get everything done. Now that we understand, and this is why I want to understand how zombie systems work, we're not really creating a getting out of bed zombie system. We're creating a hit the snooze button zombie system, because that's what we do in response to that stimulus of the alarm. So let's use a capability maturity model to try to break that habit and create a new get out of bed habit very quickly. Okay, so here's a 5-step. Remember, you always want to define it. Now, if this applies to you, you can use this, you can adjust it, whatever habit you want to change, but you always have to define it. You have to write it down. Part of that whole process of writing something down and looking at it, if you can keep it to 5 steps or less, it's a very, very good way to get started. But here's a very simple, suggested 5-step get out of bed, change your habit system. 1, get out of bed, right? Get out of bed as soon as the alarm goes off. Don't hit it first. Then you turn off the alarm. Then you turn and you make your bed. Then you walk to your closet or your bathroom, whatever is next in the process you want. Then you look back at your bed and you can compliment yourself on a job well done. If any of you have heard Adam McRaven's very famous commencement speech, he says, making your bed is the best way to start your day, right? Because you actually accomplished something to start your day, and then it's made when you come home. So there's a feeling of satisfaction. So robust stimulation is a key. It's not good enough just to imagine this or just to write it down and think it through. You actually have to do it physically, because that's what connects your brain to your real world. So on a non-deadline day, Saturday afternoon maybe, set your alarm for 2 minutes, get in bed, close your eyes, get as relaxed as possible, read through and visualize those 5 steps. As soon as your alarm goes off, run through the 5-step process, not in your mind, but physically do it, right? So you get out of bed, you physically get out of bed, you physically turn off the alarm, you physically turn and make your bed.
Sorry.
You physically walk to your closet or the bathroom, whichever is next to your routine, and then you physically look back and compliment yourself for a job well done. Okay, so that's your now get out of bed process. Get back in bed and repeat. Repeat that several times, 4, 5, 6, probably 6, 7 times, maybe at the most, right? Completely replace that, use that new process that you just defined. And you're gonna find after a few times, you're gonna be lying in bed, totally relaxed, anticipating the alarm, right? There's a little dopamine release there for anticipation, so you feel good about it. And when the alarm goes off, you pop out of bed and you feel really good about it. And you go through those 5 steps. Guaranteed, Monday morning, your alarm goes off. That's the zombie system you're going to follow. So we've just changed a habit, created a new habit in 30 minutes or less, depending on how long it takes you to go through that. What about something completely different? Okay, this habit hack, and I want you guys to use this applied parts of your life, is completely universal, right? How about tennis? One of my clients is a tennis player. He went from 2.5 to 3.5 during the time we were working together. He had a hard time looking at the ball when he hit his racket. So what do? I told him to go to a backboard, do that over and over, a couple hundred times, just, no pressure, no meat, no competition, just continuously look at the ball, hit his racket as he hit it back and forth. Okay, so he was able to repeat that, robust stimulation a couple hundred times in a few minutes. Now his problem is solved. Next time he plays tennis, he's always looking at the racket. So for you guys, hack your habits, right? So one, you have to identify the habit you want to change. You have to determine, I want to get to the exercise, so you can reach out to me. I'll explain how the insertion way works as well. Right now I cover the replacement. Insertion, define what you want to achieve very specifically, mentally walk through the steps, being aware of what you feel, write the process down, and then actually physically perform that process as using as many senses as possible, and then repeat. Okay, so again, let's work on your habits. I really want to get to the other exercise, but I want you to start thinking about this. And if we have time at the end, or you can certainly reach out to me if there's a certain habit that you're trying to break or trying to change, I'd be happy to coach you through that process on how you can change that habit, either by replacement, which we covered, or insertion. So that's habitude, right? So applied neuroplasticity can definitely help us with the habitude. Now, what about attitude? I'm only gonna go very quickly on this, but I want you to use the same principles, right? We talk about mindset. We have a fixed mindset and we have a growth mindset. How do you go from fixed to growth? It's the exact same way, right? How do you change your mindset fast? You have to define what you want. So you have to define where you want to be, how you want to think, how you want to react. You have to use robust stimulation, walk through that process, right? So if your mindset is you're going to be successful in your business, you have to physically walk through and experience and feel everything that's going to feel, right? That's robust stimulation. And then you continuously change it as time goes on.
John, you froze.
Uh-oh.
So again, the same process life that you want and repeat.
Oh, John, you keep freezing.
You have to physically, pretend to have that conversation. The critical piece of applied neuroplasticity is that robust stimulation. Okay, and it's just unnecessary and take on more and more areas. Again, I'd be happy to talk to you guys more about this. Reach out to me. I can help you talk through this. I just really want to get to the exercise because that's what's going to make the biggest change the fastest. Okay, so that's attitude. Okay, so now back to the cognitive piece. So before I take you through this exercise, and I'll explain what we're doing. Do anybody have any questions on applied neuroplasticity, on habitude or attitude?
I have a quick question, John.
Sure.
I'm sure everyone sees these commercials for Protogen or whatever that medication is for thinking and brain. Is that all fluff or?
I kind of, I actually have had several people approach me about different type of nootropics, and I'm sure that they can do some good things. I'm sure, if you get the right nutrients and so forth, and there's some that cross the blood-brain barrier. I was talking to someone just the other day about that. I try to stay in my lane, right? So I don't, I don't endorse or recommend. But, even basic things like good nutrition and exercise, those are all good for the brain, right? Because you're increasing your blood flow. So I really can't answer. If they work for you, let me know. But I do know that.
No, they advertise a lot. So I'm just curious if there's any science behind it.
Well, and that's because everybody wants a quick fix, right? They want a pill. You take a pill and solve all your problems. That's why we have an opioid crisis, right? Not that that's the same, but we're always looking for something easy. So it may actually be very good for you. I do know that what we're going to do, and then because Joseph, you were in last time too, right? The exercise that we finished with, the 1-minute neuro primer, you can use anytime during the day, and guarantee will help you, refocus and think faster. So we're just going to cover a little bit of it now, but obviously the extensive program, you can make such tremendous improvements in your brain power. So any other questions before we get started? All right, so I warned you guys, right? So for this, you have to unmute yourself and you have to open your camera, okay? So most important to unmute yourself, best if you can open your camera, because one of the things we want to work on is focus. And, a lot of times, a lot of people say, well, if you want to, improve focus, reduce your distractions. No, distractions are a part of life. We want to change your brain so that you can focus even with distractions. All right. So basically, this is the exercise that we're going to use. This is a variation of the very first exercise that we created for the Marine Corps. It's been adjusted using an agile approach. It works much, much faster than the version we originally started with. But again, we have to use robust stimulation, eyes, ears, and mouth, which is why I had you open your microphone and your camera. Right? The more parts of the brain we engage, the more those connections get faster and stronger. So the first thing I'm going to ask everybody to do, let me get my timer here, is I want you to look at that sheet of arrows, right? Now, the reason they're arrows is because an arrow is the simplest symbol. It requires a decision. You look at an arrow and typically you define it by what direction it's pointing. Oh, that's an up arrow, that's a right arrow. And now if we add color, you can make 2 different decisions from the same data set. Break it down, think it through, and execute. So if you look at the arrow in the upper left-hand corner, what color is that?
Red.
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 All right, good. And what direction is it pointing?
Right.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. I can hear you and see you. That's awesome. And you all just passed the first test, right? You have a brain, you can make simple decisions. So what we're going to do then is we're going to, as we go through the training, make those decisions harder and harder to make your brain work harder, but they're still going to be very simple. That's how we kind of trick your brain to work hard. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a baseline of the group. So in order to do this, I'm going to ask all of you, just like you did out loud, right? You said them out loud. That's important. I want you to read off all the arrows on this page out loud. Okay, just like you're reading a book. So left to right, left to right, left to right, top to bottom.
Yellow,
Right,
right, yellow, left, green down,
Left,
blue
right,
up,
up,
green up.
down, green,
Didn't say go yet. Didn't say go yet. Wait. You guys are, I've never had anybody jump ahead like that. You guys are great, man. You're eager. That's a good thing. So when I say go, because there's one other caveat about this. So when I say go, I want you to do exactly what you guys started to do, right? Say all the arrows, only the directions, no color, right? So right, left, down, up is the first 4. When I say go, I want you to say all the arrows, but in order to make it like real life where there's some stress, we're going to make it a race. Okay, so that means that when you're done, just raise your hand or hit the hand signal so I know. We're just going to get a range. Now, some read faster than others. It doesn't really matter. It's really more as a kind of a self-assessment for you to see how well you can process these decisions when there's a lot of distractions, right? Because everybody else is going to be saying different things. So you have to go as fast as you can, but I will give you a hint. It'll be easier for you if you go louder. Okay?
Everyone's gonna yell.
Yeah, go loud. So, right,
Where's my microphone?
so when I say go, I'll start the timer, and then you guys just say all the arrows, top to bottom, left to right, fast as you can, as loud as you want to. Don't worry about making mistakes. You can just keep going, and then we'll just get a ring.
I have a question. Is there a specific order?
Order of.
So are we going left to right by row and then going to the second row? Or are we going top to bottom, then moving to the second
Right.
column?
Or like a
No.
book?
So just like you're reading a book.
Okay.
So left to right, yeah, good question. Left to right, left to right, left to right, all the way down the page.
Okay.
And we're not focusing on color, correct?
Exactly, only the direction, only the direction. Right, okay, everybody's ready to go. Ready on your mark? Get set, go.
Left, right, down,
Left, down, up, right, right, down, right, down,
Okay.
Right,
down,
left,
down,
left, down,
up,
left, and right,
Down,
left, left, down, down, right,
right, up, left,
down, left,
down,
right,
left,
down,
left,
right,
up,
left,
down,
up,
right, left,
right,
down, right,
right,
left, right, up, left, right,
down, down, up,
left,
down,
left, right, left,
down,
right,
down,
down,
right,
left, down, left, down, right,
down,
down,
right,
down,
down, left,
down,
left, down, right,
down,
left,
up, down, right, down, right, left,
Left, right.
down, left,
up, up,
down, left,
up,
down,
left, down, right, left,
down,
left,
right, down, left,
right,
down,
left,
down, right,
right,
down,
right,
right, up, down, left, down, right, down, up, up, right, down, right, left, down,
up, right,
left,
right,
and down.
right, left, right, up, left, down,
Keep going.
Finished.
Up.
Everybody done?
down,
All right,
left,
keep going. Okay, so again, it doesn't really matter what you finish this, it's more of a range, but the range was between a minute 10 and a minute 43, which means that you all made 128 decisions in that amount of time, which is way more conscious decisions than normally you would in that amount of time. It's also a very normal range, right? But you know, it's kind of hard, right? It's hard to focus when people are saying different things at the same time you are. Now let's do some training and see if we can make a difference. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on only 4 across. And we're going to start working on different parts of executive function. The first one, which was very important, is anticipation. That's what we were trying to create in those Marines, right? Anticipate something else that's coming before it gets there. And because color uses a different part of the brain,
Excuse me.
now we're going to introduce color to the end.
There is a lot of background noise. It sounds like someone is cooking. Could someone stop their microphone or either stop cooking and concentrate on the presentation?
Oh, you're making me hungry. Okay. So for this, we're going to go 3 directions and a color. Okay. So right, left, down, blue would be the first row, right? So 3 directions and a color. But another difference here is rather than a race, I want you all to try to say it together. Now, it's a little more difficult with Zoom than it is in person because of the latency, but you'll get it. So now, in addition to just focusing on your decisions, you also have to be aware of where everybody else is. And take a few rows to get there. That's okay. I'll lead you off with the first row. Now, very, very important with this is you can't stop and try to fix a mistake if you make a mistake. Right? Everybody on a team and everything's going along great. Someone makes a mistake and then everybody gets sidetracked, right? If you make a mistake, and everybody does make mistakes, it's perfectly okay. So keep the rhythm with everybody else and then just go to the next arrow and say it correctly if you can. Okay, so 3 directions in a color, and I'll say the first row. You guys can say that with me and then just keep going all the way down on your own. Are you ready? Let's go.
Right, left,
right,
down.
left, down,
Right,
blue,
Blue.
down,
blue,
right, up, green, down,
Down,
left, down,
left,
red,
down, red.
right, up,
left, red,
Red.
left,
Left,
up, yellow,
up,
Yellow.
left,
Up,
down,
left,
blue,
down,
right,
right,
All
up,
together, all together.
right,
up,
up,
red,
right,
left,
down,
down, left,
right,
green,
green,
right, up,
right, up,
right,
yellow,
up,
Yellow.
left,
left,
left, down, red,
red,
down,
up,
right,
right,
blue, left,
down,
down, up,
yellow,
right,
right,
down,
down, red,
left,
red,
up,
left,
right,
up,
blue,
right,
up,
blue,
down, left,
down,
green,
red,
down, up,
green,
right,
down,
red.
up, right, red.
Okay, good. So Breeze have a saying, don't leave any man behind, right? So part of this, and why this is actually, if you ever do this as a team, it's so important for emotional intelligence is if your tendency is to go faster, you may have to slow a little bit. If your tendency is slow, you may have to speed a little bit. So you keep that teamwork and keep in the same rhythm. Now, obviously, cognitively, that's difficult, right? Because you have to be able to aware of what's going on, plus your own decisions. But though wherever it's difficult is where those changes will happen the fastest. So let's just do the last 4 rows again all together. I'll lead you off the last 4, okay? And try to be aware of everybody else and try to adjust your speed to everybody else. So ready? So last 4. Ready? Let's go. Right,
Red,
left,
Right, down, red,
red,
left,
up,
right,
blue,
good.
up, down, left, green,
green,
down, up, right, red.
red.
All right, much better, much better. So, and the reason is you're going to experience every time we do a new variation, we target different parts of executive function. They also get a little bit harder because that's what makes our brain change, right? If we do the same thing over and over again, it gets easy. By stimulating them harder, it changes faster. So this next one is that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on pattern recognition. And for this, very simple pattern, because patterns determine our ability to drive a car, relationships, and help our memory. Anytime we can get better at recognizing patterns, it improves all areas of our life. So for this, a very, very simple pattern, direction, color, direction, color. Okay, so right yellow down blue will be what you say, and I'll lead you guys off again. Now, we'll go a little bit slower because this is a little bit harder, right? Because if you say direction, you have to remember the next one's color. Say color, next one's direction, right? And the same thing, you did a good job. Don't stop it for mistakes and try to stay together.
Okay.
Everybody ready?
Yes.
All right, let's go. Right,
Yellow.
Yellow, down, blue,
Down,
green,
Red,
up,
green,
green,
down,
yellow,
down,
red,
red, right, blue, yellow,
red,
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 Left.
left,
left,
up,
green,
up,
blue, yellow,
yellow,
up, yellow,
yellow,
down,
down,
blue,
blue,
right,
right,
green,
green, right,
red,
red,
left,
blue,
blue, left,
left,
green,
green,
up,
Yellow.
up,
Yellow.
yellow,
good.
left,
left,
red,
down,
red,
red,
down,
down,
green,
green,
right,
right,
blue, left, blue,
blue,
green, down, yellow,
yellow,
right,
right,
yellow,
yellow,
down,
down,
red,
red,
left,
left,
green, right,
right,
blue,
blue,
up,
green,
green,
left,
left,
Green.
green,
down, blue,
green,
right,
right,
Red.
red.
Nice job. I was actually very impressed. You guys did a really good job of staying together because this was harder, right? Not just because of the pattern, but if you noticed, you also had to focus, right? Because if you didn't focus, you lose track. One of the most powerful benefits of this program is very quickly, it will improve your focus, which of course improves your productivity and everything else.
John, can I ask a question?
Sure, Larry.
In the prior exercises, I found as I was doing them, I was getting better at it. I was getting easier.
Yes.
This one, actually, I stumbled more as I went further into the exercise. And I'm wondering if that's a common occurrence and what the cause of that is. And if anybody else experienced the same thing.
Well, it's true. And one of the reasons is because you have to focus, right? But as we move forward and your focus gets better, it'll be easier. But you did raise an interesting point. One of the things we're trying to create here is we're trying to get into that zombie system of thinking. So typically what happens is you start off, focused and conscious, and then you kind of let yourself go, right? And you kind of get into the rhythm, you're not thinking about it. And then a conscious thought will pop back in, like, am I doing this right? What are they saying? What's going on next Thursday? Once that conscious thought pops in, you kind of have to reset yourself. But the main thing is, Larry's a very good question, is as you keep working your brain harder, everything you've done before becomes easier.
I also thought that your instructions were to only do the last 4 lines. Now, maybe that was my brain problem, because I was doing the last 4 lines, and then I realized everybody was starting from the top and doing the whole thing, and that kind of slowed me
Oh,
down.
sure. Yeah, no, the last 4 lines was what we did last time, just trying to get the sink in. So I'll make it more clear. So yeah, we always want to go all the way down, because it's amazing that, the original exercise for the Marines had many, many more arrows and little booklets. We found that with even just one sheet, from the top to the bottom, your brain will change. That's how fast it changes. I'm sorry.
How does this work, John, individually versus in a group? Because doing it as a group, then I start getting cues from other people.
Yes, it's very powerful both ways. Most of the people I work with are one-on-one coaching. I work via Zoom, but anytime you're in a group like this, it actually makes your brain work a little bit harder, because you have to also be aware where everybody else is. So you can do it both ways. So I'm going to give you guys opportunity to get the instructions to continue to practice this. So you'll probably continue to do it on your own, and you'll get great benefits. But as you're experiencing in a team, there's that aspect of it as well. So you can do it both ways. I just want to, Beauty asked a great question. I just want to address it because I missed it earlier. Beauty, you asked how we can use robust stimulation to change someone else, right? So, your kids, you could probably do it, but anyone else, we can only change ourselves and then lead them in the way we want them to go. It's really hard to change someone else, but just understanding how that works, especially if you're dealing with kids, if they want to do better at whatever they want to do better at, you can bring in that robust stimulation. So the third part of, I'm sorry, Bonnie, you have a question?
Oh, I wanted to mention something. When we were doing the first one, when you said, oh, it helps if you're the loudest one. I grew up in a big family, so I learned how to tune everybody out when I went to the gym.
Right.
I tuned everybody out.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, the thing is, so when I do this in live, like I do this at conferences and so forth, we might have 100 people, 200 people in a room. Halfway through, half the people will stop, because they're so distracted and you get mad at everybody else, right? But that's because that's kind of our baseline when we start our ability to focus. Now, not everybody had that experience like you, Bonnie. So a lot of times it's hard for people to focus when other people are saying, but I guarantee you, by practicing these exercises, your ability to focus, especially with lots of distractions, will improve significantly. So let's go to the third part of executive function, which is working memory, holding something in your short-term memory, then executing on it. And for that, we're just going to translate the colors to fruit. Now, you won't need to write them down, because again, it's okay to make mistakes. One of the great things about this program is always okay to make mistakes. And after a few rows, you will remember them. So red is apple, yellow is banana, green is lime, and blue is blueberry. So apple, banana, lime, blueberry is the first row. I'll get you started and then just go all the way down the row all together like you've been doing. Okay, ready? Let's go. Apple,
Banana,
Banana,
lime,
Blueberry.
strawberry,
lime,
lime,
apple, lime,
lime,
blueberry,
berry,
banana,
banana,
lime,
Apple.
apple, blueberry, banana,
Apple.
banana, lime, blueberry, banana,
Blueberry.
banana, lime, blueberry, apple, lime, apple, banana, berry, banana, lime, banana, blueberry, banana, apple, lime, apple, blueberry, lime, banana, berry, banana, berry, lime, banana, apple, banana, blueberry, apple. apple, lime, banana, blueberry. Lime, lime, apple, lime, blueberry, lime, banana, apple.
All right, good job, everybody. Good job staying together. Good job remembering. So now I want to start combining these, right, as we go forward. So for this, we want to combine the memory piece with the anticipation piece. Remember the first one, we had the color at the end? So this time we'll have the fruit at the end, 3 directions and a fruit.
And a fruit. Okay.
Okay, and I'll lead you guys off again. You ready? Let's go. Right,
Right,
left,
down,
blueberry.
Down,
Right,
up,
lime,
Down,
left,
left, down,
apple. Right,
up,
left, apple,
apple,
left,
left,
up, banana,
banana,
left, down, blueberry, right,
up,
apple,
apple,
left, down, left, lime,
lime,
up, right,
right,
up, banana,
banana,
left, down,
down,
apple,
apple,
down,
up,
right,
blueberry,
left, down,
banana,
right, down,
apple,
left,
right,
blueberry,
up,
down,
left,
lime, down, apple.
apple.
All right, nice job. So if you guys notice, you actually did that better than when the color was at the end. Right.
Yes.
And there's a reason for that. We're kind of tricking your brain. When it's the color, it's just a different part of your brain. But when it's the fruit, your brain has to look ahead, see the color, translate it to fruit, which actually takes a little bit of work. So it's starting to push your regular decisions down in the unconscious, which is what we want, right? We want unconscious processing. So even though they're fast and accurate, you're not thinking about it. One of our neuroscientists at Northwestern says that when we start to do this, we're starting to get us into flow state, which if you're not familiar with that term, basically means being in the zone, where we're optimizing our fast and unconscious decisions with our slow and conscious decisions. And when they become together and optimized, we can actually get into that zone and accomplish so much more faster because it's fast and accurate, but we're not thinking about it. So now we want to add the color back in now. So just again, to make a little harder pattern. So we'll keep the fruit at the end and we'll put the color on the second column this time. So it'll be direction, color, direction, fruit. Again, it's just hard, right? So if you make a mistake, just keep going. One of the reasons we make mistakes, especially in this kind of robust stimulation, is not because we mean to, but our brains, when they feel pressure, will throw out the first thing it can think of. So that's why it's very common to say a color instead of a direction or a fruit. Don't even worry about it. Your brain knows and it'll fix it next time. Ever been in a conversation with someone important and you'd say the wrong thing? This is we call that a brain hiccup.
Is he frozen? Oh.
John got a hiccup.
Did he freeze again?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
He'll come. I think he'll come back. Maybe.
Yeah, but he's probably talking and doesn't realize nobody's hearing.
oh, that's right.
Yeah, and he thinks we are counting and doing it.
Wave at him. Wave and he
If
might
you make a
see us.
mistake, just keep going.
Yeah, you were
Just
live.
when we are finished.
Yeah, you froze, John.
Oh, I froze. Okay, good. Okay, good.
We haven't heard you for the last 45 seconds.
Right.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry about that. So, wow. All this brain power, right? It's frying the computer. So what we're doing now is, I don't know how much you heard, but we're going to bring the color back in, right? Make a little bit harder pattern. So direction, color, direction, fruit. Okay. So, and then, again, it might be hard in the beginning. We'll start a little bit slower, but then go all the way through. The important thing is if you make a mistake, just keep going. Okay, we call it not a deliberate. All right, ready? Let's
John,
go.
I don't think any of us really heard the directions on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're bringing the color back in on the second column. So keep the fruit at the end. The pattern will be direction, color, direction, fruit. Okay, so right yellow down blueberry is the first row. So I'll get you guys started again and then just keep going all the way down the page. Don't stop for mistakes, right? Everybody makes mistakes on this one, just keep going. Ready? Let's go. Right.
Hello, down, blueberry. Down, red, up, lime. Down, yellow, down, apple. Right, blue, left, apple. Left, green, up, banana. Up, yellow, down, blueberry. Right, green, right, apple. Left, blue, left, lime. Up, yellow, blue, banana. Left, red, down, apple. Down, green, right, blueberry. Left, blue, down, banana. Right, yellow, down, apple. Left, green, right, blueberry. Up, green, left, lime. Down, green, right, apple.
Very good. Now think about that for a second, right? That was pretty hard, right? If I'd asked you all to start with that one, you all said you got somewhere else to go, right? You would have left. But because each time we've been on one before, I mean, that was actually probably the smoothest you stayed together so far. That's just an example of how fast your brain can change with this kind of stimulation. So what we want to do now is we want to add our anticipation piece back in. So for that, what we'll do is we're going to spread that out. So 3 directions in a color, 3 directions in a fruit. If it's easier to remember, the last column by the line will be the color, and the one at the end will be the fruit. So right, left, down, blue, up, right, up, banana will be the first row. Okay, and I'll tell you what, you guys are doing really good at this. Why don't one of you do a quick countdown? 3, 2, 1. Doesn't matter who it is who wants to step up. 3, 2, 1, and then you guys go ahead and do this. So 3 directions in a color, 3 directions in a fruit.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay,
I do
good.
Oh, go ahead, Bonnie. I'll
Oh,
yeah.
no, go ahead.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Right,
Left, down,
blue, up, right,
up,
banana.
Good.
down, right, up, green, left, down, apple, down, left, down, red, down, up, right, blueberry, right, up, left, red, left, down, banana, left, up, yellow,
Hello,
right,
right,
down, apple, up, left, down, blue,
great.
left,
Up,
right,
blueberry.
Very good.
right, up,
Right,
red, up, down, left, line,
left,
down, left, green, down, up, right, apple, up, right, up, yellow, right, left, down, blueberry, left, down, red, down, right, up, fine, down, up, right, blue, down, left, down, apple, left, down, yellow, right, up, left, apple, right, down, red, left, up, banana, left, up, right, blue, up, left, down, blueberry, up, down, left, green, right, up, right, apple, down, up, right, red, left, down, left, line.
All right, good job, everybody. That was imagine trying to start with that, right? You guys did that really, really well. You were anticipating, you were remembering, you got the patterns down.
John?
So, yeah.
Hey, I have a question. So I found that it was easier for me if I kind of kept a beat with it.
Yeah.
Is that something?
Yeah, no,
is
that's fine.
adding
In fact, when
into
I'm
it?
doing this, you'll see me go, it's kind of getting into the rhythm, right? So that's perfectly fine to do that. And in fact, we're going to do another baseline, and then we're actually going to introduce your hands, right? So that might even help with the beat part. So what I want to do now is go back to the very beginning. Remember we did that baseline when I timed you guys, and let's do it again. And I want to see if you notice anything and if I notice anything on the time, right? So no color, no fruit. As fast as you can, left to right, left to right, left to right. I'm going to time you again. We'll get a range. So again, just keep going. Doesn't matter how long it takes. And we'll compare that to the beginning. Now, again, it's okay to make mistakes. That's probably the hardest thing for most people. I work with everyone from peak performers to kids with learning disabilities. It doesn't matter. We're ingrained in us is fixing mistakes. It's very freeing to not have to worry about mistakes, right? And as a Marine marksman instructor told me, we can train speed and we can train accuracy, and eventually they come together. So when you're doing the patterns, you're trying to be accurate, but this is all about speed. We want to get your brain used to a faster processing speed, which really improves that anticipation piece that I mentioned. So for this, same thing we did before, but this time, fast as you can. You know, it's a race, right? So I'll say go to get you started. When you're done, raise your hand and let's see if we notice any differences. Okay, ready? On your mark, get set, go.
Right, left,
down,
down, right, left,
up,
right,
right,
left,
down,
up,
right,
right,
left,
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 right, left,
down, left, down, right,
left,
up,
down, right,
left, down, right,
left,
up,
right,
up,
left,
down, down, right,
down, right,
left,
up,
right,
down,
left,
up,
left,
left,
down, up,
right,
down, left,
left,
up,
up,
left,
down,
right,
left,
right, left, right,
up,
right,
down,
left,
left, up,
right,
up,
up,
right,
left, down, left,
up,
down,
right,
up,
up, down, right,
up,
down, right,
left,
left,
down,
right,
up,
up,
right, down, right, down, left,
left, right, left,
down,
down,
up, down, down, left,
down, right,
right,
left, up, right, left,
down, right, right,
left,
left,
down,
right,
down,
right, down, left,
up,
down, right,
right,
down,
left,
right, up, right, down,
down,
left,
right,
down,
down,
right,
left,
down,
left,
down,
down, up,
down, right,
down,
up,
right,
right, down,
up,
Right,
right,
left,
down, right,
left,
left,
up,
right,
down,
left,
left,
up, down, left, right, right, up,
up, down,
right, down.
left,
Left,
up,
right,
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 up,
down,
right, down,
right, left, left, down,
right, left, down, left, right.
Is that everybody? Nice, nice. Okay, good. So the times all shifted to the left, right? So before, the fastest was 110. This was a minute, so 10 seconds faster. And on the other end, went from 143 down to 120, so 20 seconds faster. And now you guys notice it too. Wasn't it easier to stay focused and easier to get through this faster?
yeah.
So much better, right? That's
Yeah.
exactly what this, you can help with this, right? And that's what we're trying to do, help you make faster decisions unconsciously. So now there's one more part of your brain and body you want to engage, and that's your hands. Now, Bonnie, I might go a little bit over. Is that okay?
That's okay with me. Brenda, is that okay?
Oh, yes, that's fine.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Because this is kind of important, because I want to leave you with an exercise that's very, very powerful. In fact, my trader, I work a lot with traders who have to make very fast decisions unconsciously, and they make a lot more money with less effort. And one of the key reasons is the last exercise we're going to do. So let's go back to the half page. What I want you to do now is all together again, just say the directions, but I want you to tap both of your hands so your fingertips hit either the table or your legs every time you make a decision. Very, very important for two primary reasons. One, almost everything we do is with our hands, keyboarding, throwing a ball, driving a car. We want the longer neurons from your brain to your fingertips to be stronger, but also because the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body and vice versa. When we engage your hands, we're also making your right brain, left brain connections faster and stronger. In fact, they've done research, kind of interesting. The profession with the most efficient right brain, left brain connection are professional drummers, because they have to do different things with each hand while they're thinking. So when you engage your hands, we're using all four lobes, both hemispheres, and your memory simultaneously. And if you guys reach out to me after this, I'll send you a recap of what we did so you can continue to practice. There'll be a picture in there, an EEG of someone, actually my daughter, doing these exercises, and you'll see the connections going throughout the brain. So what I want you to do, again, someone there can lead off, just do a quick countdown, regular directions, tapping both hands every time you say an arrow. You have to use both hands, can't use one, it has to be both. And ideally it's your fingertips that are touching each time. All right, any questions?
Oh, I just wanted to remind you to put your email address in the
Oh,
chat.
yes, I'll do it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Bonnie. I'll do that right now while you guys are doing this. Yeah, so regular directions, tapping your hands.
Okay.
No, just directions? Just
I'm
saying
sorry, just regular
directions?
directions. So right, left, down, up, but with tapping now, we're adding the tapping.
Gotcha.
1, 2, 3, go.
Right, left, down, up,
Right,
down,
left,
right,
down,
up,
up,
down,
right,
down,
up,
left,
down,
down, right,
left,
right,
down, right,
left,
right,
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 left, down, up,
up,
right, up,
left,
right, left, down, left, down,
left,
right,
up,
right,
down,
up,
up,
right,
up,
left,
down,
left,
up,
down,
right,
left,
up,
down,
right,
up,
left,
right,
down, left,
Right,
down,
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 up,
right,
down,
right,
left,
right, down, left,
down,
down,
right, right,
up,
right, down,
up,
left,
down,
right,
left, up, down,
right,
up, right,
left, up,
down, left,
down, up, right, left,
right, down, right, up, down, right, right,
Okay,
down,
good.
right,
Up, left, up,
right,
right, up,
up, down, right,
up, left,
up,
up,
down, up,
left,
down,
down,
right.
up, right, left.
Left, right.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I didn't say, so all together, we want you to do all together, but that was good, right? So my fault. I know some of you guys are so enthusiastic, you're racing that. So that's okay. That's okay, my bad. So let's do the same thing now, all together though, with this 4, but I want you to say the fruit at the end, like we did earlier, right? But this time was with your tapping, because we want to basically create 2 completely different zombie systems in sync. We want your hands doing whatever they need to do without a lot of mental overhead, so your brain is free to do what it needs to do. So direction, 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 fruit with your tapping. Okay, someone lead us off.
1, 2, 3, go. Right,
left, down, blueberry, down, right,
down,
right,
right,
down, left,
line,
down, apple,
left,
right,
down,
up, left,
left,
apple,
down,
Down,
apple,
apple,
right,
right,
red,
banana, up,
left,
left,
apple,
down, blueberry,
left,
right,
up,
up, right,
up,
apple,
together.
left, down, left,
up,
line,
left, down,
right,
blueberry,
banana, left,
right,
down,
up,
down,
right,
apple,
apple,
right,
left,
blueberry,
down,
down,
left,
banana,
line,
right,
up,
down,
left,
apple, left,
up,
right,
down,
blueberry,
left,
down,
left,
left, blueberry,
down,
down,
apple,
right,
up, right, blueberry,
blueberry,
left,
left,
down, down,
down,
banana,
right,
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 down,
apple,
left, up, right, blueberry, up,
up,
down,
down,
left, line, down, up, right, apple.
All right, good, good. So at the beginning, there's a lot of extra work. It's kind of like wearing a heavy backpack, right? You feel it in the beginning, but after a while, you don't feel it so much, even though your body is still getting stronger. So now let's try direction, color direction fruit, like we did before, but again, this time with your tapping. Okay, so right yellow down blueberry will be the first row. And someone go ahead and lead us off.
1, 2, 3, go.
Right,
Right, yellow, down, blueberry,
right,
down,
red,
red,
up,
line,
down,
down, yellow, down, apple,
banana,
right,
right,
blueberry,
blueberry,
left,
apple,
Left,
green,
up,
banana,
down,
up, yellow, down,
down,
blueberry,
Good.
right,
green, right, apple,
apple,
That's it. Both hands, both hands.
blue,
left,
left,
line,
line,
up,
yellow,
up,
banana,
left,
left,
red,
red,
down,
apple,
right,
down,
down,
green,
right,
right,
blueberry,
left,
left,
blue,
blue, down, banana,
banana,
right, yellow, down,
down,
apple,
left,
left, green,
green,
right,
right,
blueberry,
up,
green, left,
line,
line,
down,
down,
green,
right,
right,
apple.
Okay, it's hard, right? Because we had all, by the end, it becomes easier because your brain is kind of changing. Now, a couple more will be all done. For this next one, it's gonna be different. So far, we've been doing variables on the columns, which is good for pattern recognition. This one, we're gonna do a variable on color, which you have to anticipate, right? You can't get in a regular pattern. Really, brain has to anticipate. And for this, what we're gonna do is just what you did, except no color, no fruit, regular directions. But in tapping one tap per arrow, except every blue arrow double tap. Okay, now this is difficult, right? Because you're not saying blue and you're not saying the direction twice. You're doing something completely different with your hands. You're just, that first row is right, left, down, up, right? So you're double tapping with your hands, creates a lot of cognitive dissonance there that actually makes your brain change quickly. So double tap on blue, go slow, double tap on blue, only say the directions and only say the directions.
So are we only So we're tapping, we're just double tapping on blue. One tap on everything else, double tap on blue.
Yes, exactly, Natasha, that's right. So one
Do
tap
we
on
say
everything
blue
except
when we double
blue.
tap the blue?
No,
I'm sorry?
direction.
It's directions.
Yeah, just say, you don't say blue, right? It'd be easier to say blue because that's your cue. You have to say the direction, whatever direction it is, but you're double tapping on it. All right, Natasha, want to count down?
1, 2, 3, go.
Right,
Right,
left,
left,
Down,
down, up,
down,
Good.
down, right,
up,
up,
down,
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 left,
right,
down,
right,
right,
up,
right,
left,
up,
left, left,
up,
left, up,
up,
up, right,
down,
up,
up,
left, down,
right,
up,
left,
right,
down, left,
up,
right,
right,
down,
right,
left,
left,
up,
down,
left,
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 down,
left, down,
up,
left,
right,
down,
up,
up,
right,
right, down,
left, left,
down,
down,
right,
down,
right,
up,
down, left,
right,
left,
down,
left,
up, right,
down,
up,
down,
left,
right,
down,
right,
up,
right,
right, left,
down,
down,
left,
left,
up, right,
right,
up,
up,
down,
down,
left,
left,
up,
up,
down, up,
up, right,
left.
All right, good, good. So after a while, you kind of got to let yourself go, right? And just pick up on the blue, do the double tap. Now, this time we're going to do something completely different. No double taps, but on every yellow arrow, we won't tap. Okay, this is really important for impulse control. We call it inhibitory executive function. So you want to say that thing, you want to flip off the bad driver, you want to, you know, whatever it is you want to do, you have control not to do what you want to do, right? And for this, one tap for every arrow except yellow, you just don't tap. Okay?
Yellow, don't tap.
All right,
Okay.
Tasha, lead
Okay.
us off.
1, 2, 3, go.
Red,
Right,
left,
left,
down,
down,
up,
down,
down,
right,
down,
up,
down,
down,
down, left,
down,
left,
left,
right,
down,
right,
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 up,
right,
left,
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 right,
up,
left, down,
right,
right,
up,
right,
left,
right, left, down,
down,
left, down, up,
right,
up, right,
left, down,
left, down,
down,
left,
up, right,
down,
down,
up,
right,
down,
right,
right, right,
left,
down,
left,
left, up,
down,
up,
right,
right,
down,
left, down,
down,
left, right,
right, right, down, left, up, right, up, down, left, up, down, up, right,
All right, good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to combine the two. So we're almost done, almost done. So we're going to combine the two. And for this one, I want you to double tap on blue, no tap on yellow, and one tap on everything else.
Oh,
What? Say that again?
So we're going to combine the two, right? So double tap on blue, no tap on yellow, one tap on red and green.
and 1 on red and green.
All right.
Okay.
All right, go for it. Lead us off.
1, 2, 3, go.
Right.
Right,
Left.
left,
Down.
down,
Blue.
up,
Down. Right.
right,
Up.
up,
Up,
Down.
down,
Down.
left,
Left.
down,
Right.
right,
Right.
right,
right,
up,
Left.
left,
Left. Right.
Left.
up,
Up.
up,
up,
Right.
right,
Left,
Right. Up.
left,
left,
down,
up,
up,
Right.
Right.
up,
Up.
Right.
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 right,
Left.
left,
down,
down,
up,
left,
left,
down,
down,
Up.
up,
Right.
right,
up,
up,
Up.
right,
Right. Left.
left,
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 Down.
down,
Left.
left,
down,
Down.
up,
up,
Right.
right, down,
down,
Left.
Left.
down,
down,
Right.
right,
Right.
right,
right,
right, down,
down,
left,
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 Left.
up,
up,
right,
right,
up,
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 down,
down, left,
Left.
left,
up,
up,
down,
down,
up,
up,
right,
right,
eight,
left.
left.
All right,
have-
oh, it's hard, right? You guys got
Yes,
through
I have
that.
a question, and
Sure.
it might be, it was harder because I couldn't remember whether your instructions was to do the fruit at the end or just the directions. And so that made my mind make mistakes. So,
Yeah, no, that's fine. If you want to do it hard, yeah, it was all directions for this because
Okay.
really we're focusing on the hand connection. You're certainly welcome to add the fruit if you want to make it a little bit harder. That's good. So,
John, I have a question. Does this exercise get into the way different people's minds process and think in certain directions differently? Like, I had issues with one part of it. Other people had issues with another part of it, whether it's remembering directions or does this have a lot to do with assessing
yeah, no, that's
skills that people are good at or bad at?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Larry. So in the very first pilot we did for the Marines, and actually one right after that, we actually did an assessment to start with. But we found that when with this robust stimulation, the brain will always change fastest where we struggle. So, I've worked with thousands of people now in the last 14 years. And just as you said, some people will have harder with the pattern, some will have harder with the memory. But because the exercises kind of target all of that, everybody gets better. One of my clients right now, incidentally, is a young woman with very severe amnesia. In fact, when we started, her doctor thought she would never be independent. After about 4 sessions, he completely changed his prognosis to maybe being able to be independent in a few months. And if you talk to her now, you would not know that she actually had those memory problems because that was where she was struggling. Very good at everything else, but was the memory.
But also, John, I was wondering too, if you can cue yourself. So for instance, when you go to blue, you kind of say blue so that remind yourself to do 2 tap.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So I was wondering about cueing yourself. So when it comes to blue, I physically kind of say blue, and then that reminds me to tap twice.
Yeah, you can do that. Now, the cool thing is with this is whatever is maybe hard in the beginning. So that was a good cue, right? But eventually you won't even have to say cue, right? Blue, right? You're going to pick up the color and you're going to do your double tap, while you're saying the regular direction. So same thing, I work with a lot of kids with learning disabilities, and primarily and actually actually an older man, probably in his 40s I work with recently. A lot of those issues are from processing issues, right? Because we don't process fast enough to keep up. So good at everything else, processing was the issue. And so very, very quickly after a few sessions, the processing speed got much faster, which then of course impacted everything else of their life. So yes, Larry, everybody has different issues when we start. And from our perspective, those mental processes are developed when we're kids, right? From, up to the age of 6 or 7, our brains are just exploding with connections. And then that's the foundation for our life as we go forward. And if some of those cognitive processes are weaker, we have to compensate them with our stronger ones. But with this program, we actually target everything. If your brain doesn't have to worry about it, it's going to go focus on something else. I mean, it's really, we're just doing very simple things. Your brain's doing all the work.
Have you tried this with Alzheimer's patients?
Yes, Alzheimer's. I have 2 older people I'm working with right now, 2 gentlemen with Alzheimer's. Now, the other thing about this, God made our brains incredibly changeable. That's what this is all based on. And one of the cool aspects of that is our brains will rewire around damage. So Alzheimer's is a physical damage. CTE is physical damage. Concussions can be a physical damage. And so rather than trying to fix anything, we just train the brain to do what it needs to do, and the brain will take over and make those connections. So definitely, I mean, everything. I even have a client, a young man with cerebral palsy who could not use his hands, but after a few weeks of this, he regained connection with his hands. He sent me his college student, right? Sent me an email. It was kind of funny. He goes, "Hey, John, I got to tell you, for the first time in my life, I can open a bottle with a bottle opener, a bag of crackers without crushing them. Pretty useful skills for a college kid." So, and then he went from like C's and B's to a 4.0 average, because this is really impactful for students. We did a pilot at an inner city high school. Kids in inner cities, right? It's part of one of the ministries I work with. A lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of poor impulse control. So these kids raise their ACT scores, class average, by 3 full points after just 8 weeks. Better grades and far less negative behavior incidences. So that's the power of the brain. And that's why I want you guys to continue to use this. So my email's in the chat. I'm going to add another page of how you can contact me. And I highly encourage you to practice this. And that's actually leading to our very last exercise is something I call the speed drill. And it's the full page, right? And what I want you to do is I am going to time you again like I did the last 2 times, but the only difference is I want you to use your hands. So fast as you can, don't stop for mistakes, as loud as you want. The only difference for this one is you're going to use your hands now, like we've been doing the last few exercises, and we're going to see if your hands slow you down at all. Okay, ready? Everybody ready? Natasha, you want to count us down?
This is direction only.
Only directions, yes, only directions, and it's all about speed. The only difference is we're adding your hands.
Yeah, direction and hands.
But do we have to use the hands for, do we have to use the hands for a single tap, or are we still doing the no tap?
No, yeah, only single tap. I'm sorry, yeah, thank you,
Okay.
John. Only single tap, just 1 tap per arrow, no double. This is all about speed. So we're kind of taking everything off that's slowing us down. We're just adding our hands.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, go.
Right, left,
left,
down, up, right,
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 down,
down,
right,
right,
up, down, left,
down,
left,
left,
down,
left, down, left,
down, left,
down,
down,
left,
right,
down, right, down, up,
down,
right, down, right, up, right, left,
down,
left,
right, right, up,
down, right, left,
right, down, left,
right, right, right,
down,
down,
up, left,
right,
right, up,
down, left, up,
right,
right,
down, left, up,
right, up, right,
down,
right,
left,
up,
down,
right,
down,
left,
up,
up,
right,
left,
left,
down,
up,
left,
right, up,
down,
right,
down,
right,
up,
left, down,
right,
down,
left,
up,
up,
right,
right,
left,
up, right,
down, left,
left,
down, right, up, down, down, right, down, down, left, down, right, right, down, right,
down,
up, right,
right,
left,
right,
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 down, left,
down,
right,
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 left,
right,
down, down, right, right, up, left, left,
down, up,
right, down,
left, up,
right,
right,
down, up,
right,
right,
down, up,
left,
left,
down,
left,
up,
left,
up,
down,
left,
left,
down, up, up, down, left, up, right, down, up, right, down, finish.
Okay, good. Very good. Keep going.
I have a comment. I
Is that
think
it?
my
Is everybody-
brain,
Sorry, is everybody done?
Yeah.
I
Okay,
have
good.
a
Okay, cool.
comment. it slows me down, maybe because my brain works differently than everybody else. I feel guilty when I say the wrong thing.
Well,
And
yeah, and that's one of the biggest actually benefits of this program, and everybody does it. It's so what people I work with, some of the ones the hardest thing is not to try to fix mistakes. Absolutely, that's our condition. That's the habitude we've created our whole lives, right? You got to do things right. So it's very freeing not to worry about mistakes on this, and it's very, very difficult. You'll find that if you can let go of that, you'll be able to go much faster. Right. And because that is what holds us down. Now, for that range, that was 109 to 118. So not quite as fast as the last one, but faster range than the very first one we started, even though we added your hands. Now, that last one we did, I call the speed drill. That is probably the most beneficial thing for you to going forward. That it takes you basically a minute, a little over a minute. If you do it a few more times, you'll get down under a minute. That 1 minute neuro primer you can use anytime during the day. In the morning when you start your day, before meetings, before phone calls, anytime that you need, like I said, that's my traders use this before they start trading. And what they do, and I think this is important, what they do is before they start trading, they run through that speed drill. If they can't get through the speed drill fast and accurate and not stop for mistakes, they do it again until they can, right? Because if they can't get through the speed drill fast and focused, they're not ready for whatever else is coming. Same thing with you guys, right? So you run through this before an important meeting, before you study. By the way, another benefit of this is this type of stimulation primes the brain to learn fast and remember better. So if you have to study, if you have to prepare for something, run through the speed drill or some of the patterns. So basically, so what I want to do, so this is my book, right? So again, I highly recommend it. I'm going to put a link where you can get a hold of it. But what we covered today was habitude, attitude, and cognitude, right? Whatever you want to change, you have to define what you want to do first, then apply your robust stimulation to make it happen, and then continually improve it. That's the agile approach. So, and again, send me an email. I will send you the deck, as well as kind of a description of what we did, why we did each thing, and how we did it to help you practice. And there's actually even a kind of a sample routine you can follow. If you want to do these on your phone now, or when I send these to you, there's a couple other things my fellow authors and I have put together. There's 100 do's and don'ts. It's the book that I was part of was the 5th volume in the series. So this is really useful do's and don'ts from 5 years of authors. The middle one there is an app. It's got great. It's got for 5 years of authors. We've got podcasts. We've got blogs. We've got all kinds of very, very useful information. It's all free. And then the one on the end is a link to my website, where if you'd like, you can go ahead and order the book through my website. You can go directly to Amazon and do that as well. But I highly recommend it, not just for me, but the other authors are phenomenal. I've learned so much from them. You'll probably get a lot of insights. And my chapter is about kind of what we talked about: attitude, cognitude, and habitude. So threw a lot of stuff at you this morning. Any questions?
I have a question. I do this with you because to me it's a game. But what I lack in doing these trainings is I don't have the motivation. And the motivation you're providing is because I'm getting this free Zoom interaction, which is my motivation for joining to begin with. And the game, competing with everybody else, that was a game to me. But when I try to do something for myself, I don't have the motivation to make me want to do this. And so I find that that's the hardest thing for me to want to do it.
Right. And that goes kind of to that attitude piece, right? So you've got to have a reason for doing things. Now, what I recommend is that you would attach that neural primer to something else in your life that you do, right? So like you eat breakfast, right? Or you have coffee in the morning, whatever you jog, whatever you do in the morning, just attach this to it, right? Make this part of your habit. So you run through this. I trained a marathon runner. He says if he runs through this before he runs, he's ready, he's warmed up and ready to go faster than before. So you start to see those benefits, you start writing down the benefits. You might find that you have some reading to do and you're done faster. Or you may be in a stressful situation, you're not as stressed. So that's a good point, Julian, is try to associate it with a positive feeling. But that whole discipline piece, it's so much easier to attach it to something else that you already do, as opposed to trying to create something new.
John, I have a question about, well, two questions. Number one, have you seen or have there been any studies in terms of physiological changes in conjunction with when people do this training? You actually see physical anatomical changes that would manifest itself in better behavior?
Yes, because wherever we're stimulating the brain, that's why we use your hands, those changes get stronger. So, I mean, I work with people with anxiety, depression, and all learning disabilities and all kinds of things, and physical disabilities. You know, I mentioned Ben with the cerebral palsy, another woman with MS, she regaining some of the use of her legs. So wherever we stimulate the brain with robust stimulation, that's where the connections are going to faster. Now, obviously, this is just, I mean, I give you guys just a taste, right? So our program basically is completely customizable. So we have more and more difficult exercises that I customize to wherever people are struggling. We can change those exercises, change those variations to get very fast changes. And as well, you know, we do it with individual one-on-one, most of my stuff, but one the team, one the company. Again, send me an email and I'll give you some more information on that. It can be very powerful for overall productivity, proficiency, and efficiency of not just individuals, but also of teams. Because as you guys experience, when you do with someone, you got to kind of time it, right? You got to time with everybody else. You have to be, it's very good for emotional intelligence because you want other people to forgive you when you make a mistake. So you got to figure out other people that make a mistake. And it's a really good team bonding experience as well, regardless of what the underlying issues are. And I trained the EOD unit for the Navy SEALs a few years ago in San Diego. And afterwards, I was really, I mean, made me feel really good. You know, I was working with these guys and this sergeant came up, he said, you know, this has been the most important thing I've ever done. He said, I know that I had a lot of PTSD, a lot of struggles. My anger was tearing my unit apart. I couldn't control it. Now, he said, I'm so much in control. I'm so much more focused. And I did, because he didn't want to go report that he had a problem, right? Nobody wants to leave their team or the unit. So it would make a huge difference in his life. And the cool thing was he didn't have to be singled out. He was doing it with everybody else.
John, I see the individual benefit, but is there also a function of a rising tide raises all ships with respect to establishing best practices, rules of engagement, and getting everybody moving more efficiently in the same direction as a team, which is so important in sales team building?
Absolutely. The companies I've worked with, they'll start their meetings with some of the, you know what meetings are like. Everybody comes, they're distracted, they're thinking about what they want to talk about. You run through a few minutes of this first, everybody's focused, they're engaged, they're laughing. I did an executive team for an insurance company in Chicago a few years ago, and I got an email from the HR director 2 weeks later. She goes, you wouldn't believe it. Our quarterly budget meetings are usually so destructive. Everybody hates each other when they're done. They take hours. She said, we're done in 90 minutes and everybody's seeing kumbaya. She actually used that term. So then they had me come back and work with their sales and customer service teams, which was another interesting thing I found. If you guys do customer service, when we work with the customer service teams, we expected them to be making more calls because their brains were faster. But we actually, it was the exact opposite. What they said was, I can resolve a problem now in one call that used to take me 3 or 4. So they were actually making less calls or taking less calls, but they were resolving more problems per call, which was actually much better. Something we didn't even expect would happen. So good questions, Larry. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it doesn't matter what you're struggling with or what your team's struggling with. When you're all pulling together, making your brain faster, more focused, you can really accomplish some. You know, some sports teams I work with too. I mean, same kind of. I mean, I got to admit, I had one of my favorite stories. The top quarterback in the Canadian Football League now, Trevor Harris, is one of my clients. So I worked with him when he first took over as starting quarterback a few years ago for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And that year, you know, we were doing the brain training. That year, his stats were 10 points higher than Brady's. I mean, completion record. But halfway through the season, he said, "Hey, John, I'm doing great, but we're also leading the league in sacks allowed, right? Because I'm getting hammered every game. You got to protect the quarterback." So I donated an hour of time to the offensive line. No sacks for the next 3 games. And the team went on the next year. They brought me out to work with the whole team. And they went all the way to their Grey Cup, which is our Super Bowl. So again, really powerful for teamwork as well.
Is there a difference when you're working with these teams in person and or over Zoom?
You know, that's a good question, but I've had to work a lot more with Zoom. I love doing it in person, right? I mean, even the conferences, I'm finally just starting to open up again. It's just something different dynamic when you're in person, but I've worked with many teams via Zoom. Ideally, they're all in the same room, but even like we're doing here, we're on different, different screens, depending on what the objectives are, because the program is very customizable to objectives. I can adjust, to make sure we meet those objectives. So ideally, in person's best. Second option would be the team in person with me remote. And then the third option would be like we're doing here, where everybody's remote.
Any other questions?
Good question. Any other questions? All right, well, make sure you email me. And, I always like some feedback. Could have done this better, could have done that better, because I always trying to improve things. And I'll send you, as I said, a recap of the exercises we did to help you practice, as well as the deck. So you have some background there.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Kettle Space. And thank you, everybody. And we're wishing you a wonderful holiday. And also feel free to sign up for the newsletter. And we're going to have our startup app coming soon, too. So have a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday. We have to get you back again, John.
Yes, I'd love to. This is fun. You're a good group of guys, good group of people. Like I said, you're the first group that jumped ahead. You're so enthusiastic to get going on that exercise. That's a good thing.
Thank you.
All right. Merry Christmas.